Welcome to Inner Voice of Knowing podcast. I'm Kaye Doran, a shamanic leadership coach and healer, guiding you through life with a foot in both worlds. When you understand the terrain of the inner landscapes, the mental, emotional, spiritual and energetic, you will become the leader within your physical life, both personally and professionally. After all, the power of change is in your hands. Let's get this journey started. Welcome back to Inner Voice of Knowing. What an amazing and interesting guest we have today. I'd like to introduce you to Alexandra Joy, known as AJ. After 25 years working inside boardrooms across Australia and supporting thousands of leaders, AJ came to a simple yet profound understanding. People don't thrive in environments built on force. They thrive in environments built on connection. She's on a mission to grow strong leaders the same way she's grown over 1,000 trees, consciously, consistently, and deeply rooted. Straddling two worlds, the high stakes intensity of the boardroom and the timeless rhythms of the bush, AJ brings a rare way of seeing what truly endures. With an innate ability to read a room, she weaves together organisational psychology, Indigenous informed wisdom, nature immersion, and decades of lived experience. Welcome, AJ.
Oh,
wow.
Thank you.
You know, I
Excited to be here.
I relate to so much of that, and especially, you know, like for me, it's like I say, a foot in both worlds. Where do we start with someone like you? Like, how did you come to bringing Indigenous culture and this understanding of connection and earth into boardrooms and high-performing leaders?
Well, and I think that's possibly a good place to start, Kaye. And thank you. And I want to just take a moment to pay my respects to traditional custodians. I'm on the lands of Wonnarua and Darkinjung land, so I pay my respects to elders and whichever elders are present as we speak as well.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, chills. Yeah.
I, unlike you, who I know from listening to your podcast and meeting you, I know that you had inklings of your kind of spirituality and your gifts from early age. Whilst I did see a lot as a child, and often had quite prophetic things, like I would see an accident scene on the road and say to my mum, "Don't look," because I'd say, "That's Mr. So-and-so," and I'd know.
Oh,
and
wow.
Going to people's houses where I would see faces come out of the floor and be like, "There's a sad man here," you know, and I would describe them. So childhood like that, but then pretty much all of it shut down. And so for a large majority of my adult years, if we'd talked about any of these topics, I would have been like, light your incense, put your cheesecloth on. This is all woo-woo.
Yeah.
And I really followed the path of corporate and, had some deep trauma in my childhood that I think made me strive and challenged me to kind of get into my brain rather than feel things in my body. And so for all of my teen years, 20s, 30s, I climbed the corporate ladder. I was, someone who did the 3 degrees, did my master's, became the youngest director of a large public agency at like age 28, the first
Wow.
female director they'd had, the youngest director they'd had, and really pursued that relentless work hard kind of thing.
Strive. Yeah.
Yeah. And anytime I would have met you, I would have said I was fine. I would have acted like I was thriving. And yet so much of that was masking.
Did you feel extra pressure? Sorry to interrupt, but did you feel extra pressure because you were 28 in a position where most women or even men at that age would not necessarily have achieved that?
Completely. And, I had this little bit of dramatic in my personality and I loved performing as a child. And so little bits of me would show up now and then. I still remember on a Melbourne Cup day, one day we had a board meeting and I wore my hat to the board meeting, like, because I was like, I can't be at the Melbourne Cup, but I'm going to wear my hat. And it literally brought the board meeting to a standstill. No offense, but it was all males, all over 50 and me. And so they all wanted to talk then about the race. They wanted to talk about my hat. I ended up having to take the hat off and put it under the table.
It
so
was
that
the
the board,
distraction.
completely. So the board meeting could continue. And it was maybe a month later, I was in Governor Macquarie Tower, I remember, in Sydney, in the city, at a big event with the Premier of New South Wales and all of these dignitaries. And one of the board members was there, and that meeting I'd been in had been the first time I'd met him. And so I saw him across the room and I went over and said hello. And he said, oh, it's the woman with the hat, the color and movement woman. And so that was a bit of a like, whoa, like, I'm a professional, I know my stuff, and yet I was being spoken to that way. So
yeah,
in a way, it told me shut down any of that creativity and, a little bit of my own personality. And I kept following the kind of corporate path until I reached, go.
Sorry, why do you think they do that? Like, if a man walked in, maybe with a more flamboyant jacket on, or, and some sort of cap, do you feel that would have spread? Like, you became known, oh, the woman with the colour and the hat.
Absolutely. And I think it's actually a response to people being afraid.
Yeah.
It's a fear-based response to you're a threat. Your difference is threatening me. You're a bird of a foreign feather kind of thing. And people want to experience certainty and they want to know you're one of us. And I need to control you and contain you. And if you show any of that wild side or any flair or a creative side, it's a threat. And so completely also started me to realize there's a consciousness going on and people respond to things differently depending on where they're at in their own level of consciousness. And so whilst I was still in corporate, I hired my own coach, and I hired a business coach to help me get better at leading my team. I'm like, I want to be a great leader. And it really started to change. Instead of me telling people what to do, asking them questions and bringing them on board. And I really felt like I'd been a bit of a dictator leader before because that's what I'd been modeled.
Yes.
And it started to open my heart and my head to different ways of leading.
Was your coach a man or a woman, could I ask?
It was a man, yeah, because at the time it was hard to find a business coach who was a woman. We're talking early 2000s.
Yeah.
So, and yes, I have grey hair, so I am that old. And so the business coach really started to open me up to new ways of working. But it really wasn't until I had then a physical breakdown, like really hit adrenal fatigue, just couldn't keep pushing so hard because it was so misaligned with who I actually was. And I had a moment where the treasurer of the state of the country I was in told me I had to do a certain thing, and I felt that was erring on unethical. And I spoke up and said I wouldn't in a meeting, and I got told in swear words to leave the room and got told to suck it up and basically do as I was told. And I felt deeply, this is not right. It doesn't sit with my values. It's a misappropriate use of public money to do something that's someone's pet project that's not in the interests of the, population.
But even if they didn't agree, the lack of respect and even addressing, and it's like that sort of bullyish leadership, really.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I started to realize, oh, my days are probably limited and numbered,
Yeah.
Because as I'm maturing more and more, my own resistance to this isn't right, this doesn't feel right, and Whereas before, I think my ego had helped me sit with, well, this is part of a career. And even if something's uncomfortable, I'll find my way around it. But I started to go, the more senior positions I'm in, the more I'm seeing corruption, the more I'm seeing things that are just boys club stuff, blessings to all the good men out there. But that's what I was seeing. And so I started to call it out and to be angry woman going, I challenge this. And so I resigned. And at the same time, my marriage was really on the rocks and starting to break down. And no wonder I'd been a workaholic. And really because my marriage had also been very controlling, very much a patriarchal male. And as I'm evolving and growing, I'm like, this doesn't feel right either. And so I was being controlled and contained at work and at home. And so, of course, it turned up as, no female hormones, adrenal fatigue, chronic fatigue, all sorts of heart problems, health hazards. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am now, where I know that everything is connected, everything is energy, that as leaders, we need to be alive in order to help other people and create cultures that come alive. And so that's kind of where I sit between the two now, trying to bring back some of that aliveness into the corporate world because the two can mutually exist.
Well, we're in the business of life as much as life is about business as well. And, people tend to think, and this is what I really loved when I came across you in this group that we're both in a year-long thing. And the moment I heard you, it was an introduction session. And I'm just like, chills, chills, chills. And it fascinated me because people are always saying, oh, well, you can't bring that stuff into business. And it's like the same principles that rule our personal lives basically just rule our lives about energy. Why doesn't it fit into there as well? That's the very thing that's lacking. When was that pivotal moment when you started to learn and understand about energy and what you're introducing now into corporate fields?
Yeah, thank you. And I kind of call them surrender moments, the point of surrender. And I've had a few. And it wasn't that I was kicking and screaming against them, but I didn't go chasing them naturally. And so I'd started yoga as part of my healing recovery from adrenals. And, funnily enough, I resisted it completely in the beginning. I'd go to a yoga class and when they do the shavasana at the end, the lie down and integrate, I'd be lying there thinking, oh my God, like what could I be doing with 3 minutes? This is ridiculous. I'm not laying here, Every bit of me wanted to resist. But the more I started to drop in and I actually started to learn to meditate, and I wore a Muse headset that gave me biofeedback. So I had to try and master meditation as well. Everything was coming from my left brain logic. But the more I did it, the more I started to drop into my heart. And my yogis that I had been studying yoga with, I ended up doing yoga teacher training and yoga therapy and really started to get into it. And yet I was still a rookie, didn't know a lot of the philosophy and lots of the history. We learn a bit through our classes. And they were going on a trip to India. And it was right at the time where I separated from my then marriage. And so I was like, screw it, just do it. I'm going. And so I'd had a health diagnosis of pre-cancer right before the trip, 3 days before. And they said to me, you have to stay, you've got to have surgery and, investigation. And I was like, no, you know what, I'm going to India and you can book my surgery when I come back. And so off I went, and I went without really knowing that much about the country. I didn't even know what our itinerary was. I just went along and went, I'm just going to go along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I had some most profound experiences there. One in a cave temple, Babaji's cave temple, and another one in a temple that was right on top of a mountain looking at the Himalayas. And, on a podcast, I won't be able to do justice to those moments,
Yeah.
But the first initial one in Babaji's cave was actually looking at a picture of him that was on the wall, and he had very piercing eyes in the picture. And I can only describe it as I melted into the picture. Like, as I looked into this picture's eyes, I could see it looking into me and me looking into it. And it was like I dissolved into it. And I was stuck there for quite a few minutes, and the yogi teacher who I was away with must have sensed something, and she came over behind, and then I felt it like waves of nausea and energy coming through me, and she sat me down. I couldn't move. I still couldn't see, so I couldn't really see or hear what was going on in the room, but I knew she was pushing my back and pushing the energy up and out until eventually they got me out to the door of the cave where I was sick, vomited like from the amount of energy.
Were you scared, or
no? I didn't.
In that place of something profound is taking place?
No, and I had no like reference point for this, so I was just
no one does
so deep in it. I had no idea. And she then stood and looked at me, and I remember looking in her eyes and seeing the universe. That's the only way I can describe it. And I still get quite choked up. And I looked at her and I could just see the universe through her eyes. And I was like, oh my God, it is so beautiful. And she was nodding and saying, yes, yes, it is. And I was like, oh my God. I just kept saying, oh my God, I can't believe this. I don't remember a lot after that. Someone had to put my shoes on because I couldn't dress myself, kind of thing. And they took me back to the hotel where I just slept. So they drove me in some tuk-tuk back. And people went shopping and did all sorts of things, but I just slept. And then maybe the next week we were on top of this mountain that you had to walk up all of these stairs to, like 2,000 stairs at the top of this mountain. And it looked directly at the Himalayas, all the snow-capped Himalayas. And there was a temple there with a sadhu in it, and I gave him an offering. And then I did like 3 laps of his little temple, and I was just having gratitude in my heart for my family and my dogs. And, I was just sending love to all those people that I loved in the world.
True gratitude, not planned.
Yeah,
just coming from within you. Yes.
This beautiful gratitude in my heart. And then as I stood and looked at the Himalayas, again, this huge surge of energy, and my arms went up like above my head and I couldn't put them down, like just this energy. And again, the yogi was there and supporting me. And again, it was like my heart cracked open and I just felt filled with love. And as we came back down the mountain, they were all stopping at a little stall buying chai, and there were cows wandering the streets and goats, and I was stopping and hugging all the cows and kissing them, and little kids in the villages, I was like, they would all come running to me and I was like cuddling them all and telling them I loved them. And so for about a week, I stayed in this completely blissed out state where I was like, oh, everything's beautiful. And it was just completely foreign to where I'd come from. And yet I had this real sense of this is actually what's real. Yeah.
I was just going to say that because I've had an experience different, but that's saying that, oh my God, that whole oneness and the weeping and the joy and love, because of the connotations we put around love. I don't even feel like love is the word. Anything, I understand this with you, anything that you're sharing, taking that experience and even attaching words to it to try to communicate it completely also limits it.
Yeah.
Did you feel grounded through that, like hugging, kissing cows? And I get it. That would be me.
I would have been one of the elders I work with now, one of the Indigenous elders here in Australia will say, oh, look, that person's a bit of a loose balloon. Where they're up there and not very grounded. My yogi and the crew I was with were really good at supporting me and helping me, but I would have said I wasn't totally grounded then, and I hadn't really learned how to integrate what was going on. So I was, I was a bit airy-fairy, I would say. And when I came home to Australia, I just had such a a shift in my own awareness and consciousness. And it wasn't like I went around telling people and, I went back to day-to-day life, but I knew that something really had to change. And I was already a property investor, so I already had some rental properties and those sorts of things. And I started realizing a lot of tenants were struggling to pay rent and there was a bit of an affordability crisis. And I was like, there's got to be another way. And so I started to investigate tiny house living. And it was when it was very new. So there were only 3 tiny houses in Australia at the time.
Okay.
And I commissioned a builder to build a tiny house. And I thought, I'm going to put this on a block of land and, use it to support women who maybe are leaving domestic violence or people that just can't afford a decent accommodation. And I thought this is going to be a solution. And then I thought to myself, I can't really get someone else to live in it if I wouldn't. Like, is it actually livable? And so I really just went through this process of shedding everything and shed 75% of my belongings, gave everything away, kept some heirloom pieces of furniture that my grandfather had made as a carpenter, things like that. Kept some shoes, but really let go of most of my shoes and handbags that had all been from corporate world. And through the process of about 9 or 10 months, had a builder build me this tiny house, and then just realized I didn't have a car big enough to tow it. So I had to then import a car from America and got my big F-150 and then went on this journey. And I knew I wanted to live on the land, but I didn't know where. And I had found that I'd kind of found or awakened in India, but I came home going, I need to find myself here in my own land and country. And I'm 4th generation Australian. I'm non-Indigenous, I come from European countries, but I knew that this was home and I needed to find that grounding here at home. And so I left on a journey of slow travel, of going to little towns, living for a week or two, feeling into the community, moving on to the next, and kind of going, where's my place to call home? And
a bit like a pilgrimage.
Yeah, totally. And just exploring. And luckily enough, my work as a consultant allowed me to kind of move around. And I started to really get attracted and drawn to certain places. I nearly bought land in Bellingen. I nearly bought land in Bangalore. Like, there was some places, but I kept coming back to this place called Wollombi and its surrounding areas. And really it was trees and rocks. And I kind of went, okay, the mountains, trees and rocks are my thing. And so I just followed Australia and looked for places like that. Unfortunately or fortunately, my travels got cut short after about a year of this because my mother had a stroke. And so I needed to come home and to be available to her. And so I still lived on the tiny house parked at someone's beachfront property, which was very nice. But I spent about 9 months actually and stopped working so I could just be full-time carer and look after my mum. And she lived for about 3 more years before passing. But it was just such a blessing and again, a point of surrender to just go, I'm here to be of service to my mum. And I don't have children of my own because it was never safe to have kids. But taking care of my mum was kind of reverse parenting, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, I get that. My mother's 96 and
wow.
And in Melbourne and I'm in Western Australia, and I got a call one evening and she was so distressed. And I said to my husband, I felt like she was the child calling me across the country as the adult for help. And I felt helpless because there was nothing that I could do.
Right.
And then she finally got on to my sister. But I understand that, suddenly it feels like it's reversed a little bit. Yeah.
And so I had to do things for her that you think no child normally would do for their parent, except in those circumstances. But it was again such a surrender point of just dropping in and having unconditional love for someone and doing whatever was needed,
Could you speak into, AJ, but could you speak into surrender? Because surrender is a word that everyone sort of throws around and they almost put effort into it. What is, how do you surrender, and what does it sort of feel like for you, true surrendering?
Yeah, well, I have actually, I love the work of Dr. David Hawkins and his conscious energy scale. And I've actually kind of developed a quasi one of that for leaders really looking at it. And what I find is in his scale, where he says things below the 200 frequency, below the line, require force, and things above have innate power. For me, the tipping point, and in his, it's kind of courage. So it's that tipping point where the force coming in and the force opposing are equal. And so you're like held in this space where it's like either this or this. And the point of surrender to me is going, rather than trying to force or choose one way or the other, it's surrendering and going, I'm going to go with the flow of what comes next, like in that moment. And so letting go of forcing and letting go of resisting. Does that make sense?
Yes. There's no choice to be made.
So having neither force or resistance, and it's kind of a 0 point. It's like this void, which was those moments I'd experienced were being in this void where I was completely in the now. I was such a futurist, people always thinking about what's my next investment, what's my next job, what's my next thing.
Yeah.
In these moments of surrender, all you can do is just be in the now. You can only be fully present and grounded in the now. And so for me, that's what surrender is it's not giving up, but it is an allowing, and it's no longer forcing and no longer resisting. And so being in that space, it's a liminal
natural state. Like when we look at nature, the way the river doesn't force itself, does it? It flows over and around, and
completely.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking so beautifully into that, because again, it's, words get sort of bandied around.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
totally.
And I like to stop and go, well, what's your take on that? What is it really for you? Because it brings meaning to the listeners as well. Because even when you speak about it, there's a tone that changes, which means the energy is shifting. You can feel it. It's so
that's really
inviting,
interesting.
because everything for me is about energy, right? So when you talk, there's a there's a tonal change, there's a softening.
Right.
You smile, so the body is responding.
Because I feel it, right?
And it invites others through that, being touched by that energy of that description that you've given, that takes them on a journey, not the journey of conceptualizing. The experiential. So thank you for that. Really beautiful.
And I would say it's the exact same thing that I experience when a meditation drops in.
Yes.
Where you kind of go, there it is, and there's this kind of really juicy spaciousness of, it's almost a breath. It's not an inhale and it's not an exhale. It's the in-between.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where the two have sort of met. Really?
Yeah. Right. And so it's where the meeting of two come together. It's that spot in the middle. And that's, I think, what I've also learned from walking with Indigenous elders here is so much of what they do is allowing the seasons, is going with the flow, is fire keeping and watching the fire and listening to the fire and going, it wants more food in this way, or it needs more oxygen, or it wants to dance, or whatever it is. It's how they sit in that, as Miriam Rose coined Didiri, that deep listening, where they're completely in tune, and again, not forcing, not resisting, but just allowing and responding in that moment, not reacting, but choosing and responding in that juiciness. And so for me, it's about, how can I expand that for teams? How can I help teams and organizations and leaders and people find those juicy points of surrender, and instead of being fearful, actually embrace them and almost expand them so that they can find more meaning.
Did that come from some aha moment? because the two worlds most people perceive as very different, they're
Mhm.
not.
Yeah,
You know, in
totally.
fact, the world that you've been describing and that feeling and that essence is our most natural, authentic state of being, the real world,
Mhm.
let's say,
Yes.
right? And then this is
Yes.
the projection of. Was there an aha moment to go, I need to bring this into that world that I experienced that was so harsh? Or was it just a fluid, natural
Yeah.
progression?
For that, I'd say it was more of it started to become who I was.
Yeah.
And, I've been really fortunate I grew up with some elders in my life and
Yeah.
some friends at school and their dad, and through corporate had some exposure that way, but then met a grandmother, and she kind of took me under her wing, and I've been really very fortunate as a white woman walking on this land
Yeah.
to be allowed to participate in many ceremonies, to sit on country, to go walk about on country with some amazing elders. And so I think it's been more as they've shown me some of that and
Yeah.
reflected back what's in me, right? And that connection to nature and my yearning to live on the land. The more I've lived where I live now on country, the more I say the trees whisper to me.
Oh, yeah.
The land speaks to me. And 20 years ago, I would have said you were lost the plot if I heard someone in leadership saying that. And so I think it's just slowly, quietly begun to imbue how I lead and how I do what I do. And as a facilitator now, most of the time when I'm training, facilitating, coaching, whatever it might be, I have a foot in both camps. I understand strategy and I understand the nuts and bolts of building a company, but I'm allowing so much of my intuition, of the whispers I'm getting to just come through, that in the middle there, people are going, something just happened and it's magic. And I'm like, it's actually not magic. We all have opportunity. And so I now have a boardroom in the bush. So I bring corporate teams out here because I know
And they
the
can
power of nature.
expand just by the very
Oh,
nature of being around bush rather than concrete walls.
rather than fluorescent
And
rooms and all of that.
fluorescent. Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
So before we go
Yeah.
down the path of the impact that this is having with these people, let's just sort of stop for a moment, if we could, and go, why are the Aboriginal elders choosing you to be immersed in this?
I guess if I just come back a step without ego, they're not choosing me. When you're called, you feel the calling.
Yeah.
And it's the land and, it's country, I think. I'm super grateful and also really mindful of never misappropriately taking someone else's culture as my own.
Yes.
But the blessings that I have received through them wanting to share what they know and what they've learned that's been handed down through multiple generations. I think they've just sensed the calling in me, and I've just been really fortunate that they have allowed me to walk beside them.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to word it that way because that's the way some listeners might be thinking about it, do you know?
Right.
And you've just taken us on another journey in the
And
way that you've reframed that. And they would feel that, like, those two major shifts that you've had shift you permanently.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really think the gift of taking care of my mother really removed a lot of the ego that was still there and very strong, from my corporate background, where I know I'm good because I've got a certificate.
Yeah.
Really surrendering to caring for her stripped away a lot of that, so that when I did come to country, I could really marinate in it. And, I say every day, whatever's going on for me, land just composts it and takes it and, responds to it. And I think the more I've been custodian here and listen, I plant a tree every day. Quite often I'll plant a tree and then a few days later I'm like, oh, it's not happy there. I need to move it. And it might be moving it 10 centimeters or down to another whole area.
Yeah, but you're listening.
It's being in tune with that. It's watching the birds. I've been planting a lot for birds, and so it's really becoming a bird sanctuary. I've probably got another 4 species that are present here that weren't when I came. And so that custodianship, I think, for a lot of the elders I've sat with is how they have been more comfortable showing me things because I'm showing up and showing my commitment to healing the land, to healing myself.
Yeah.
And I have to say it didn't come easily, and I didn't sit at circle and fireside with elders very well in the begining. I got chastised a lot. Yeah. I asked too many questions. I would stack my questions. I would pepper elders with, but what about this? And what about that? And how does this work? And how does that relate to that? And I've got a real connectedness brain. So it's always trying to connect all the pieces together. And so their way is very circular, and they might be out in the dreaming or, listening to their own spirit guides and elders. They might be on a dreaming track somewhere. They might be in a whole different dimension.
Yeah.
And I'm asking 100 questions, which is discombobulating for them because they're so in an expanded space.
Yeah, it's harsh.
That I got lessons. I remember at one camp that was for 5 days on country. The first night I got chipped by one of the elders and told I was not allowed to speak for the remainder of the camp, which for a communicator was like, ah! And, for the first 24 to 48 hours, I was bitter. I was like a shitty child, a sookie. I'm not allowed
What do you mean I can't speak?
And the others at the camp looked at me like I was this horrible person. I was so close to wanting to pack up and leave because I was like, this is so not fair and not right. And then, I went to bed again with gratitude and went, you know what? I need to take this lesson on board and tune in and really feel into this. And the next day I woke and thought to myself, I'm just going to send love. I'm going to give love through my heart to these beautiful women that I'm on camp with. And so I just showed up with love. And very quickly they started to, if they were making tea, offer me a cup of tea. Every now and then one of the aunties or someone would just give me a little softer smile.
Yeah.
And I realized then how much deeper I was listening, how more I was aware of going, oh, when that auntie was speaking, the trees changed and the breeze changed, or look, a kingfisher has come and sat above someone while they're speaking.
Yeah.
So I was so much more aware, and I realized I've been missing all of that because I've been so in my own head, so wanting to get it right and learn. And so I've had lots of lessons along the way like that have helped me learn to tune in, to shut up, to listen more. And here I am talking lots.
But this is a podcast. You're here to share. But I again, just want to pick on that moment because we all face moments where something is said or happens and we sort of want to push back like, you can't control me or whatever it might be, that reaction, right? Rather than the sort of the proactive, we have the reactive. But I just want to point this out to everybody because how quickly you turned that around simply by reframing, simply by making a choice, because so many stand and they're still pushing back, right? And how much you would have missed out on had you have held that stance instead of going, as simple as this. I'm just going to go into gratitude. Gratitude led you to love.
Yes.
Love threw open all the doors.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just one little choice, one decision to change your perception led to another one that just opened everything up. It's beautiful.
It was kind of a conscious decision, but not a deliberate, I would say.
Yeah,
It was just a knowing I woke up with.
Yeah. But you listened, AJ.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I was beginning to learn to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of those law women I still journey with today, and I have absolute deep trust for them, and I hope they do for me as well, and some of them have expressed that.
Yeah.
You know, I consider them like family to me in the same way that the birds and trees here I consider as family. I mean, every time I drive home and see any roadkill, I have to remove it and put it on the dirt. I say blessings over it, you know, and for me, I feel like that was a member of my family. Like I really have dropped into that, which is completely different to the city dwelling, high heel wearing woman I was. And yet I still walk there in the city as well.
So does she almost feel like a past life? I actually wrote something today for social media, and it's about that because I'm in a bit of a process this myself, you know, where you're not just going through a bit of change, right? We can choose to change in little incremental ways every day. But when big leaps come, there's the death before the rebirth, right? And then when you go through the death and land into the new, I always feel, oh, that's like a past life now. Do you know what I remember? Like a past me.
Like who was that?
Yeah, and it's beautiful because I can see it from childhood and all those pivotal moments, not just of change, but death, rebirth, and the feeling that it takes through that, and the egoic mind bringing up all the fears and all the stuff you buy into, but you have to deal with that to clear it, but also stay really focused on that emerging. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like you've gone through, you know, death, rebirth? And
I kind of do have these two phases of my life. It's a bit like, you know, people say before Christ, after Christ, before the iPhone, after the iPhone. For me in my life, it was kind of before India, after India, that it was a bit of a sliding door moment, even though, as I said, I wasn't chasing that. It's what happened. And I've only once been to a psychic intuitive medium.
Yeah.
And I still remember her telling me that the first half of my life would be all about entrapment in order that the second half of my life would be about freedom, and that I would really experience freedom and therefore be able to shine a light on that for others. And so I really feel like that has kind of happened.
That's powerful. And then how do you bring that into the corporate environment, or even bringing them, you know, into the land environment, but still shifting such heavily anchored ways of being and doing?
Well, you know, like everyone, there are days I forget and where strategy's louder than silence, you know, that happens all the time. But I think my biggest lesson has been learning that I'm not leading people. I am just a vessel or a conduit. And the land that I'm on is called the Valley of Joy, the meeting of two. And so I really believe I'm like that spark in the middle between the two. And all I do is hold space. So I just invite people to put what they need to in the bowl while I hold the bowl.
Can you give an example of that for listeners to really fully grasp?
Yeah, great question. So maybe it's, well, I've been coaching a few leaders of late where they've been having some issues in culture and different people.
Okay.
And they're really trying to fix things. So they're trying to prove or push or fix. And so the mechanic mind is like, there's a problem, we need to fix it. And quite often I'll be like, can we just hold space? Could we just hold presence for our team and create space for them to voice, share, or come. And so I'll often say to leaders, don't be the swimmer, be the swim coach. Don't get in the pool.
Ooh.
Like, stay out of the pool, but walk beside. And so
Yeah.
it might be a team that's been really dysfunctional or had some problems, and we just get them in a room together, and I will just open the space for them to share. And people most of the time will start to breathe, allow, and truth tell. And then once the leader realizes they don't have to hold it all together, they don't have to have all the solutions, but actually they could allow their people to be part of that solution and to co-create, then there's a respect and honoring that allows whatever to transform. It's hard to put into words.
It's making me think of the way that I talk to parents with teenagers, right?
Right.
So it's sort of like you've been the boss, you've been the manager, right, of the business of your family. But when they become teenagers, you have to be demoted. And they're like, what? No, you need to be demoted to wise counsel because you've imparted so much up to here, and you've jumped in and helped save them and, all that sort of stuff and slowly let go. But when they become teenagers, if you don't allow yourself the demotion and allow them to come to you and ask for your wisdom, but let them decide what to do with it, you're just going to have them completely, that's when major disconnect can happen. It feels a little bit like that. Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Don't try to control it. Let them have a voice. Let them, if they want to hear anything from you, great. And everyone will figure it all out and it'll all land because everyone's feeling heard and one person's not trying to control.
And exactly what you're saying. And I think one of the tools that I use through human synergistics, the LSI, it measures constructive thinking in leadership. And one of the most constructive things we can do is actually be self-actualized.
Yeah.
So for so many leaders, I'll be like, don't fix the problem, work on yourself.
Well,
and in
how
the
does
same
that
way,
land?
right? In the same way with the leaders or the elders telling me to stop asking questions, it was when I worked on myself and came to a place of love that things transformed. So for many leaders, when they start to journey inward, I'm like, your team will only go as high as you've gone deep. You want them to go higher, you have to go deeper. And some resist in the beginning.
I was going to ask about resistance.
Sure, some do. But when they're ready, and I find a bit the same as I was, when you're called, that most of the leaders that work with me are usually wanting to become more conscious of finding
on that precipice of readiness.
The point of surrender, right?
And they would have the respect for you to deal with this other element because of your history previously, which would open them up more to you. And
holding trusting spaces. I don't lead in going, I'm going to do some magical consciousness woo-woo stuff with you. I go with strategy. I go with, let's have a look at where your team's at. Let's maybe use some diagnostics. Let's get a measure of that. And then I'm like, okay, what's the picture of the future you want? And then I might start to encourage and go, okay, let's go deeper.
And how's it working for you, continuing to stay the same?
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And so, and actually in a Western world way, statistically, the companies that have the highest profits are the most sustainable, have the most engaged employees and happy customers that have all of those thriving metrics working are the companies that have CEOs and leadership teams that are the most self-actualized, that are the most conscious.
And I imagine, AJ, that it would be soothing this whole burnout, can't sleep, all the things that come with constant striving and you're trying to control and
exactly.
Yeah.
And because I've had the burnout journey and I'll bring in some yoga therapy. So often once I'm trusted with a CEO or someone, we might do some tongue diagnosing. So I'll be like, poke your tongue out for me and I'll have a look. And
Wow.
and I don't tell other people I do that stuff, but I'll be like, I can see stress, I can see cortisol, I can see all the different ailments. I'll talk to them then about, are you noticing this and this? And they're like, yes. So we'll start to heal them from the inside. It'll be next time I go to the company, someone will stop me in a corridor and go, and poke out their tongue and go, am I okay? And I'm like, they've obviously been talking.
But that's a prime example of, you show up one way, and the more they feel that trust and that energy that you emanate and what you're bringing out of them, everyone's so much more open then to the things that seem just a little bit weird, which for the likes of you and I are like completely normal. Thank you very much.
Totally.
And it's the energy that you're bringing that is touching them, that's bringing something else out of them, that opens everything up to even more. Do you know what I'm saying? I probably didn't communicate that beautifully, but yeah, it's just the love.
I think it's just that I found a way to show up with love. I am really non-judgmental.
Yeah.
I have heard so many things from leaders and people that they're ashamed of, or whatever that might be. And I feel like every day when I come back and I walk on country here, I compost that away so I don't wear it or carry it.
Yeah.
But really, you can't learn surrender from a book. As much as I love Michael Singer's Surrender Experiment, it was transformative in my own life in building the tiny house.
Yeah.
It was inspired by his book. But you learn it from life. You learn it from standing on the edge of the cliff and thinking, how do I jump? And, every time I've surrendered, that's when I've expanded. And so I think with leaders, they just sense that I'm not there to judge them or give them a hard time. I'm just there to challenge them to grow in whatever way they want
when
to.
you do that work, like I see myself, or anyone that's doing like what we're doing, we have to have a title or titles, and but really, I just see myself as a guide that knows the terrain. They have to walk it. Like when I went to Borneo to go up to the top of a mountain to meet some shamans, I did that journey, but I needed someone who knew the terrain, and they were pointing out monkeys and things that I couldn't see. And by the time we got to the top, I'm like, oh, look there, like everything. Oh,
you were
look,
tuned
yes,
in.
I can see it. I did the journey, but I needed a guide that understood. And if you've been doing all that inner work and the external change that's reflected back, how can you bring judgment to somebody else? Because this is the way I say it. Once I'm so aware of my soul and my energy, I can only ever see and sense the soul and energy in another.
Right. Yes. And a dear friend of mine, a beautiful Danish woman, Charlotte, who teaches mindfulness, she always says, dear little human. And so whenever I look, I'm like, dear little human, there you are, because I am too. And what I've seen proven over and over and over again is the matrix that we're in does not respond to costume. It responds to consciousness.
Let that land.
So the more we can take off the costume and allow the consciousness to rise, the more it responds and the more magic is allowed.
Oh, it's just washing over me like a shower. That is so beautifully said. It's like just a moment, let it all land. I say this sometimes, but with this one, I feel like this energy that you bring, that you emanate, it's like a meditative awakening journey. Years and years and years ago, I was maybe about 27 or something, so I had young ones, and I went to a big conscious living expo and thought I'll have a stall. And I set it up, and I had my books there, and I just sat there. And I'm just, because I love to watch and observe and also feel the energy. And I was just sitting there smiling, and this man came up and he goes, I don't know what you sell, I don't know what you do, but I want some of it. You're the only person here that just feels like you've got this authentic peace. And I'm like,
beautiful.
He didn't care. He didn't know that he wanted something of it, because he said, everyone's trying to get me to stop, and you're just sitting there and you just seem at peace and happy. Isn't
that beautiful?
This is not that, but that sort of presence of knowing I tried to bring when I was, building and dismantling sales teams and things like that. And they'd all be going, but Kaye, it's going to be the slowest day and you haven't hit your targets yet. You're letting all of us. And I went, oh, guys, it'll take one person to walk in the door.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And at every single time. And they'd just be like, and after a while, they took on that mantra, it'll just take one person
Right.
to come in the door. Like they stopped buying into it's the slowest day, it's this, it's that, they got
Which is
more
all
present.
just mind stuff, chit
Yeah,
chat.
eradicate the fear. I know I'm going to make it. It's okay. You take it, you take it, you take it. Well, the podcast is called Inner Voice of Knowing. How do you experience your inner voice of knowing, and how potent is it for you within your personal and professional life?
Beautiful. What a deep question. And I just want to say before, when you're at the table, that to me just says you found your frequency. Like we all have our own frequency. And when you find it and vibrate at it, it is attractive. So, you've obviously found yours.
Well, it's also then feeding it and maintaining it.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's spiritual
all those
hygiene
human things that come
every
in
day. And that's something that the elders taught me is spiritual hygiene, like protection and taking care of yourself and having your guides around you and knowing your tools. I literally have a dilly bag. I have a sacred bundle that has my tools. And so knowing that is really important.
That they're not concepts. They're not, things to play with. It just becomes an integrated way of living your life, because when you start, I watch this with so many people that start to remember and then they feel terrible because they've gone back, and I've gone, well, how did the old coat feel? It's like, oh, it doesn't fit. It's itchy.
Yeah.
And it's like, that just was to demonstrate to you that everything that you started applying and doing was working for you.
That's right.
That's all it is. Yeah.
So where did I find and trust mine? I think through meditation was definitely how I first started to access my own inner knowing, inner voice, as you say. And even to the extent I had some spiritual friends that all said they had spirit guides. And I was like, I don't know if I have any, and how do I find them? And so every meditation I'd be like, do I have a spirit guide?
Yeah.
Show yourself, let me hear you. Do I have a spirit guide? And it was months and months and months, literally. And I would be doing my meditation and saying, spirit guide, are you there? And then one day at the end of my meditation, I always thank, the elders, custodians, anyone who's gone before me, all of that at the end of my meditation. And I hear this little voice, and Eric. And I was like, what the hell was that? And I was like, okay, next meditation, I thank all the guides, all of, the elders, everyone who's gone before us, and I hear, and Eric.
That's hysterical.
And so maybe third or fourth time I was like, are you my spirit guide? And I hear, uh-huh. And so it was almost like the universe being funny, because I was like, Eric? Who the hell's Eric? So I think universe has a good sense of humor. Where I find my inner voice now is when I'm walking on country. And so I walk my dogs, rain, hail or shine, every single day that I'm home. We walk country, or wherever I am, I walk country. And I would say it's in the trees and the land, and it's just tuning in. And I wouldn't say I'm prophetic or anything like that, but I hear, not audibly, but hear a voice. And it drops in. So recently I'd had something where really strongly I got a voice say, don't put death on the altar. And I was like, whoa, what's that? And so it's that clear. I will just hear a phrase or something. And then it's up to me to kind of navigate through my days, weeks, and work out what that is. If I get really challenged, I will ring or call one of the elders, or often they'll message me because they're like, I've been listening to you through a journey line and I'm sensing something, so something will show up anyway.
Yeah.
But I think, how I feel rather than I think, how I feel is the more I have trusted that connection, the more I have allowed that connection, the more abundantly magical and beautiful life has been. And even though it has its challenges and all of those sorts of 3D world things,
Yeah.
I can absolutely say I feel very blessed. I feel very much alive, and my only wish is to share that joy with others. And people come here to the property and they say the minute they get to the front gate, they smile and they're like, I'm smiling already. And that to me is joy. When I had a dear elder who's now in Sky Country, Uncle Bill Smith, smoked the house and the land before I moved in. And he said, what's my wish for here? And I said that people just come here to the land and feel healed and supported and loved. And I said, nothing's to do with me. I will just custodian and take care of the land. And he said, take care of the land and she'll take care of you and she'll support others. So that's all I'm doing, is just planting a tree every day, loving up the land, and I just watch her do that for others. Yeah.
That is so beautiful, AJ. I could sit and just be in your presence and talk with you forever and a day. Thank you for so much that you've actually brought to this episode. And I myself will be listening to it more than once, because there are also moments there where I just wish that we could have just stopped and felt beyond the words of what you've shared. You've really brought something really beautiful. And to those that have been present with us, which I have so felt in this, blessings to them too. But what you're doing is so needed on so many levels, and so many blessings to you to keep walking this path. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for opening the space for people to share. Much love.
Join me on my next episode. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe by clicking on the plus button if you're on Apple, or like and follow on Spotify. Rate and review. And please share Inner Voice of Knowing with your friends.